share ideas that with your audience that you may deem appropriate. Quick housekeeping. I am digitally recording this session, and we'll share the digital recording on the cocreatebook.com website, as well as with each of you. More importantly, I want to make sure this is interactive. So although I have some very specific things I want to share with you, as you have questions or comments or want me to clarify anything as I go through, by all means, please use the question section on the right-hand side of your screen. You'll go to Webinar Tool, and now I'll make sure I pause to address those. So without further ado, if you don't know anything about me or my background, I'm passionate about business relationships, very specifically to fuel enterprise growth. I speak 50, 60 times a year globally at company meetings, association meetings. I moderated a board retreat last week, and I consult. And what's fascinating to me about Co-Create is you start to see some very similar challenges across and opportunities across a broad array of clients. So Evershed Sutherland is a global law firm. ThyssenKrupp is a global manufacturer of elevators, escalators. American Society of Microbiology is a scientific society of microbial science professionals. And IPREO is a Blackstone Goldman Sachs joint venture in financial services technology. On the surface, these folks have nothing in common. But you start to peel back the onion, like I said, and you start to see some very similar both challenges and opportunities. And that's where a lot of the Co-Create ideas come from. I also do a lot of executive coaching. 30 or so executives have gone through the program in the last couple of years. I'm elated that Co-Create is actually book number 10 since 2008. Most notably, Relationship Economics, which I've also mentioned as the prequel to Co-Create. As you'll see, and we're going to talk a lot about, co-creation is most effective, successful, impactful when the premise, fundamental core, is a set of great relationships. On a completely personal note, I have a young family. I have 2 teenage kids, so I'm hoping they'll buy me some sympathy votes with each of you, especially since I'm teaching my daughter how to drive these days. I have a couple crazy dogs, but what I love is that they show you unconditional love on a daily basis. I'm an old Eagle Scout. My son's 1 rank away from Eagle, so we're fairly active in scouting. And I ride motorcycles for my downtime. It's a great chance to put on the earplugs and the helmet and get out. 45 minutes north of me is the North Georgia mountains, and it's just beautiful, beautiful country to get out and really kind of disengage and think about things. So as I mentioned, this is a series of webinars. We've covered 3 already today, and they're all available on the website, cocreatebook.com. Today, obviously, we're going to go deeper into this idea of strategic relationships and the evolution of that idea inside companies. I hope you'll join us next Thursday, the 20th. We're going to talk deeper into customer experience. We did a ton of research and social science research and some insights on really creating a different customer experience. In a couple of weeks, we'll cover this idea of leading through provocation. Those 2 ideas typically don't go together. Most people think of servant leadership, not necessarily leading through provoking others, but I'm going to show you why and how it's relevant. Early May, we'll talk about the spiral of growth. Where do growth opportunities come from? Everybody I meet, every executive I work with, every P&L owner wants more growth. Well, let's look at stair steps. Let's look at the spiral, if you will, of growth. The Monday before the actual launch, we're going to talk a lot about exceptional experiences. And on May 9th is actually the publication date by St. Martin's Press. So we'll be shipping out, all the pre-order books in terms of both individual orders and bulk, and hopefully celebrating with some libations that day. But if you want to learn more about any of the efforts, again, cocreatebook.com is a good place to go to, and recordings of these webinars, and we're going to start posting articles and interviews and videos and a lot more over the next several weeks. So in terms of today's agenda, I want to quickly refresh the Co-Create premise. I really want to talk about, and the core of this idea is the evolution of organizational functions. If you think about this idea of relationships, nobody has a relationship with a logo. Nobody has a relationship with a building or a warehouse or a bunch of furniture, right? The relationships are with the individuals. Yet the market, there's just all kinds of dynamics that are impacting that on a daily basis. So I want to talk about how is that changing, and hopefully leave you with some practical, pragmatic insights and ideas that you can act upon. Just as a friendly reminder, again, if you have questions, comments, please use the question section on your GoToWebinar tool on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll make sure I pause to address those as we go. So let's take them one at a time. For me, books often start with this burning question, right? This thing that pesters me for a while, and the question that led to this one was, if I'm your biggest competition, how would I disrupt you? And make no mistake about it, every single one of my clients, you heard about, across the broad spectrum of what I do and different types of clients I'm blessed to work with, they're seeing competition. Most of it is from known, likely places. Some of it, which is often the most dangerous, and most companies are most susceptible to, are the ones you don't know of. Again, I've said this before. I've worked with Hilton. I've worked with Marriott. I've worked with Intercontinental Hotels. Not sure any of them saw Airbnb coming. Right? If you think of the taxi business or the limo business, or in some ways even the tow truck business, all of it is incredibly fragmented. So when an Uber comes with not just a convenience, but the fact that most cars only have one passenger in them, and their driving purpose is we're going to reduce traffic in the street, it becomes a pretty uphill battle for others that are not in that business to try to compete. Now there's Lyft and there's Juno and there's others, and others will continue to improve on the model. But the point is, sometimes those who are going to disrupt you aren't even known competitors to you today. They don't have the baggage. They don't have the legacy. They don't have. I read that Schick, the razor blade guys, Gillette is in trouble in that space because they're just constantly losing market share to, I think, Dollar Shave Club and Harry's. Now, the disadvantage of the other two guys is they don't have the distribution that a Gillette has, but they also don't have the overhead. And they've done a phenomenal job building, nurturing one-on-one relationships with end customers. So more profitable, much more control over an exceptional experience, really smart branding, right, is just translating into enormous growth for those other competitors at Gillette's expense, right? So, again, I've been thinking about how will you compete in the future. If you keep doing what you've always done, not sure how long you're going to stay relevant. If you keep, coming out with new clever offerings, but really feels like more of the same, it really is going to come across as momentary. You'll be okay for now. Only when you really think about how will we compete differently in the future is when you're going to remain relevant. And by the way, that horizon isn't some 10 or 20 years. It's 18 to 36 months. So if you don't hear anything else from me today, you need to hear this. How will you think, feel, lead differently in 18 to 36 months? That is the runway. And we'll dive much more deeply into this customer experience model. But if you think of this infinity loop in every industry ecosystem, what I've observed, what I've seen is, and think of the last time you bought something, right? We're always in the middle evaluating. We discover, we consider, we come back to evaluation, right? We buy, we use, we come back to evaluation. And the experience in that constant infinity loop comes from basically our perception of the brand, the value proposition we perceive them to bring before, during, and after we buy, and then really how do they fit in our bigger journey, right? I don't travel for work because I have nothing else to do. In many ways, a lot of what we do is a necessary evil. What I want to do is go see that client. The problem is that client isn't down the street. It's 2 to 4 to 6 to plus. You go, international plane ride. So when airlines send me this goofy, survey. How is the gate agent in your overall experience? Who gives a leap about the gate agent? What I care about is your flight. You canceled, without mentioning any names, you canceled 3,500 flights in the last 3-4 days, and 4 of them were mine. And even as a Diamond member, you left me stranded 3 times. That's what makes me constantly evaluate. There's got to be better options. There's got to be, I'm going to start looking into more clever services or more creative services, or I'm willing to potentially pay more not to have to deal with this airline, right? And of course, the PR nightmare the other one has on his hands for dragging a customer off of a doctor, no less, off of a flight so they can shove their crew on there. That's just again, it's going to be a PR nightmare for him. So the premise for Co-Create is really focused on how will you compete and how will you remain relevant. So you're not the smartest person in the room. None of us are. And we don't all have the answers. And I keep saying, a mentor keeps driving into me, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? How can you make sure that you don't become complacent in kind of how you think about what you're doing, what you're not doing? Agility and nimbleness matters more than ever before. Transparency and unique perspective are absolutely at a premium. And by the way, I don't know of an individual team or an organization that doesn't need to evolve to remain relevant. So with all that in the background, what if you co-created your evolution with fewer, more meaningful, more impactful relationships, right? You cannot invest in everybody equally. I'm meeting with a team today, and their number one complaint in nurturing relationships is, I'm too busy. And if you're busy, that's the biggest deterrent from you investing in those relationships. And by the way, those relationships are all around us. It isn't just a customer. It isn't just the freshly minted MBA. It is the guy in the docks. It's the person, it's the receptionist. It's the driver. It's the service technician that spends more time out in the field in the bowels of how our customers use our technology, our products and services, than any analyst that is looking at a whole bunch of numbers. So this idea of co-creation can in essence come from anywhere. Are you savvy enough to listen? Are you savvy enough to really pay attention to what's happening all around you? I said earlier, relationship economics is really prequel to it. I'm about to write the 3rd edition of that book, Relationship Economics, and this is a more recent model we've developed on really 6 phases of strategic relationship development. So on the left-hand side is mapping, right? Creating a game plan, having a game plan, executing a game plan. The middle is really your relationship development engine, right? You're going to sustain, you're going to nurture, you're going to request. In the middle, that's really what you're doing a lot of. At points, obviously, you want to try to relate, right? And it's that engine right in the middle. Co-creation is really the right on the right-hand side, the red. It's taking a few really strategic relationships and elevating them to a very different level. It's really hitting at a moving target, if you will. So 8 core ideas in co-create. 1 is introspection. We covered this. Is you gotta make time to really think, and you gotta find ways to adapt to that disruption, because not only is it all around us, it's going to continue to be all around us. Adaptive innovation. How do I really pay attention to these faint signals and pilot and prototype? We're going to talk about fewer, more meaningful, more real strategic relationships today. Next time, we're going to talk about you're a guest in your customer's journey, right? How do we move beyond acquisition to retention? And how do we really build an efficient, optimized organization? I talked about earlier leading through provocation. How do we challenge the status quo? This spiral of growth, how do I look at leading drivers? Again, I had a really interesting conversation with a client today, and we're talking about dashboards, and he brings up all this great data they're trying to get access to. And my question is, all that is in the past. Those are lagging indicators, right? You're looking behind you to try to figure out how to get from point A to point B. So I wrote in the book, and I talk a lot about leading drivers. What are those leading drivers like repute, like sentiment, like social, like that can be more predictive in kind of where we're going, what are we doing? 7 is all about exceptional experiences, right? How do we anticipate? I'm going to show you some really cool cognitive computing, cognitive technology that's helping that. And probably one of the things that I'm most proud of is this idea of making these ideas, making the book practical and pragmatic. And the last chapter is all about the co-create canvas. So how do we actually use this canvas to think through where we've been, what's missing in terms of opportunities, how do we now package in a new optimized value to take to market, right? And again, I'll show you a lot more of that as we go on. So if you think about the evolution of an organizational function, and again, quick reminder, you have questions, comments, please use the questions section. You're welcome to jump in that way, and I'm happy to address any of those. But it's good to see a lot of good folks on this call this week. So why organizational functions must evolve? Number one, just a quick reminder, our traditional org chart, you want to know where it came from? Yeah, World War I. Command and control is basically a 1930s model. Yet how many companies still run their business with that same organizational structure, organizational dynamics, organizational functions, which, by the way, many of them are silos, and we all collectively know silos don't really convey collaboration. And since I have collaboration on the subtitle of the book cover, right, I think it's important to point out 4 things that are fundamentally happening that's going to force you to shift the way you think about that organizational structure, organizational design, organizational functions. We're going to talk about the shifting brand narrative, right? The shifting brand narrative. In the past, it used to be you had enormous control, if not all of control, over your brand story. That's no longer the case. Fundamental demands of the co-create economy, right? There's a big difference between push marketing, push advertising, push management, push leadership, push, and what I'm trying to shift that lens to is one of market gravity or pull. How do we create, and a very simple, silly, but a simple analogy is, have you ever tried pushing a rope? Yeah, it doesn't work. Conversely, right, it's a lot easier to try to pull something toward you by becoming an object of interest, by leaving them wanting more, by really becoming a big part of that event. You remember the infinity sign I showed you? Becoming a big part of their evaluation, big part of their choices to consider, big part of why they chose you, and really ensuring that what you promised before they bought is consistently delivered through that process. So all of that creates more pull for you, your products, your services. This idea of enterprise evangelism, I believe, is a sustainable competitive advantage. I actually, believe it or not, was going to call co-create enterprise evangelism. And the publishing industry didn't like that idea because it just sounded too much of a religious content. And that's really where it comes from. So if you think of evangelism, our perception of it is very much a religious connotation. But if you peel back the onion, think about it a second. It's delivered with conviction. Its intent is to change or influence your thinking and call to action, right? And the goal is, the fundamental goal is, help you think differently about something. What if those evangelists were your customers? What if those evangelists were your employees? What if those evangelists were partners you were working with? What if you activated this whole army that you're not tapping into today to intelligently, if not passionately, talk about you and your products and your services and your unique value, right? So we'll talk more about that. And this idea of impact of strategy visualization. We just started another project with a client, this last week around, visualizing their strategy, for their board, right? But also down their associates and across multiple international markets. And there's been no better time to be succinct, be articulate, but be visual in conveying where the ship is headed. And just a reminder, they cannot follow you if they don't understand where the ship is headed. They cannot follow you if they don't visually understand where their efforts fit in to that direction. How does my work make a difference? So in the past, right? One of the things that's forcing this is really this changing mindset of who is a customer, right? Traditionally, companies have thought of customers as, people we deliver value to and they pay us for it. What if you treated all these different stakeholders, from employees to media to partners to right, others, all as customers? Would that change your mindset? Think of some of the things you do for customers and you completely ignore the employees. Or the mindset is, we go out of our way to please customers, and employees, let's just use the heck out of them until we've right, sucked every ounce of energy, excitement, passion out of them, and then because they're really dispensable and we can find somebody else. How about the same thing with partners? Let's beat the heck out of them for 10% more margin, and then when we're in trouble, let's ask them for help. How does that work exactly, right? Or media. I really only want to reach out to media when I've got something to say, and I really want to make sure we're packaged the best way possible, right? So what's in it for them? So would you do things differently if you really thought of different relationships, different pockets who are instrumental to your success, all as customers? Just something to think about. And more importantly, what would you do differently as an organization? So I want to give you an example. And most of these, I want to share ideas and perspectives and give you kind of practical, pragmatic things to take away, right? So most of you are obviously very familiar with Instagram. You're very familiar with Instagram's presence in the market. What you may not know is their enormous impact in the fashion industry, right? So back in, I think it was 2011, Oscar de la Renta and his folks and a lot of his peers started to post things on Instagram in backstage. So in essence, they leveraged this platform to give everyday consumers of the beauty industry, consumers of that space, kind of behind the scenes look. And maybe sometimes better to be lucky than good. But what they stumbled upon was a very logical platform to now, for lack of a better word, crowdsource, to now, for lack of a better word, really tap into this fashion industry, the arts community, and really broaden co-curation, not just curating an event, but co-curation of what's hot and what's interesting. And you may have no idea who this woman is. Her name is actually Kristen Joy Watts. And they hired her. She was involved with, launching the New York Times photo blog called Lens. But apparently, great eye and very much relationship-centric. And her idea was, how do we get others in the industry? And she actually called them Insta models, right? How do we get others in the industry to start generating conversations around brands? So Kendall Jenner, you may have heard of her lately, and the whole the soft drink challenge, 54 million followers on Instagram, right? Gigi Hadid, again, you may not know or care who any of these people are. What my point is, individuals who are now becoming incredibly influential, right? The Insta model influence in terms of promoting brands, in terms of, and you'll see shortly, getting paid very handsomely to promote brands and promote the use of those brands. This is exactly what the fashion industry, Instagram has been able to do in the fashion industry, is leverage a platform to get conversations going, get dialogue, get this community who is visually inspired going and moving. And that's just one example of what we're seeing in the co-created economy, is that the brand identity that you have worked for, you believe, you've worked really hard to build and promote and control, is unfortunately moving beyond your control. So if you think of a brand reputation, it's really determined much more so by what other people are saying about you, right? and more so in a low trust environment, right? It's the whole process of engaging and influencing, and it has to be done in a co-created manner. The days of you just tooting your own horn, and there's still a lot of brands that do that. And I read a great quote somewhere that still a lot of brands are living in Advil, right, where advertising reigns supreme, and their target audience moved out years ago. So you're still promoting all that's great about you and your company, and I'm just not sure this day and age, how often does that really resonate? And that's evident by, employees who are looking on Glassdoor before that interview. Let's see what other anonymous employees or employees that have left have said about this company and its management and leadership style and so on and so forth. It's investors who talk to, not analysts, not even the company executives, but other investor friends about, hey, you've been to several of their board meetings or you've been to some of their investor conferences. What's your perception of these guys? So the insights are coming from a lot of other places versus just you and your own efforts. And I don't think this is going to come as a surprise to you. There's a ton of research that shows customers are just turning away from particularly what I call intrusive push, right? I'm there for content and all kinds of pop-ups. Most of us have blocked those, but all kinds of stuff is just, disrupts that in a very intrusive way. So this Kantar Futures, really interesting research we found. 50, and again, I don't think anything is going to come as a surprise to you. 50 plus consumers avoid buying products with intrusive marketing messages. It actually backfires. There's a diminishing return. If you get in my face, especially when I'm trying to do something else, it's going to backfire. 70% buy software to block out digital ads, right? The pop-up blockers and all those other things that they don't want. And I don't know about you. More recently, it's now starting to show up on my smartphone, and I have one of those watches, and it's nothing but intrusive. 55% pay to use ad blockers. We literally don't want to see them. And this is very consistent with, paying a monthly fee to my cable company so we can get a DVR so I can record the shows I want. Yeah, I know about Hulu and Roku and those other things too, right? Business buyers, right? Business buyers have some very similar kind of trends. So what you need to understand is the business process, the buying process is actually happening without you, mostly. The buyers expect a very consistent and ideally a fantastic B2C experience from B2B sellers. So wait a minute, I can go to an Amazon, or I can go to an eBay, or I can go to a whole lot of other sites and one-click buy and get and see. And with yours, you still want me to fax information in? Or I have to call and actually talk to 15 different people to get an answer? No, thank you, right? And firms, and I'll talk more about this again, that really have effective segmentation and really journey mapping, I'm going to show you some examples of that, are really going to outpace their competitive peers. So segmentation is all about, and again, I can't recommend highly enough, a former CEO of mine has written a book called Smart Customers, Stupid Companies, a guy named Bruce Kasanoff. And in it, I think I showed some examples. I know I showed some examples of it last time, where he talks about his SMART analogy. Segment your customers, or your target audience, target relationships in my case, based on the needs. Modularize your capabilities to meet those needs. Anticipate what they're going to need from you next, right? Reward win-win behavior, and really then transform the touch points. So segmentation, it's success in a lot of what we're going to talk about is predicated on, and this whole chapter ends with needs-based segmentation that says not everybody's created equal, not everybody has the same interest. The more you really segment your target audience based on what is it that they need from you, not, listen to what I'm saying, not about you, your products, your services. What is it that they need? The more you can help them learn and buy, in essence, versus sell them, much more likely they are to engage. Journey mapping is really understanding what stages they go through in their evaluation, in their consideration, in their looking at options. When they buy, why do they buy? Which channel do they buy from? again, really smart. I'm working on a couple of those projects right now, and they're insightful. I'm beyond capturing the process. What highlights is a lot of what's broken, or opportunities to fix, enhance, leapfrog what we've done and how we've done it, right? So the buying process without you, yeah, there you go. CEB Global, 57% of buying activities are done before the sellers ever get involved, right? Here's Forrester. 90% of the buying process in B2B is completed before a business makes a sales call. Business technology buyers complete more than half of their evaluation process before contacting sales. So I don't need you to come in and tell me about feature function benefits, right? What we did for years. I've already done that. I want you to come in and tell me, where's this going? How are you different in this competitive landscape? Will this fit in my unique environment? And again, when I talk about the evolving role of organizational functions, if marketing has to do things differently, guess what? So does sales, so does business alliances or relationship or kind of the partnership opportunities. So influencer marketing is another one that's taken off in a huge, huge way, right? Look at some of this data. Micro-influencers are much more efficient per engagement than big accounts. You're going to get lost if you try, to go to one of the Kardashians to promote a product or service of yours. Why? The followers are all over the map versus somebody who may specialize in just a specific product or area. Total's brand spend on influencer marketing reached $81 billion with a B this past year. Yeah, companies are spending money on people that can help them get their word out. The average charge of sponsored posts on Instagram by an influencer, $270. Fashion, $430. Brands that implement this get $12 back in this earned media for every dollar they spend. So in a world where marketing ROI is really difficult to prove, right? Influencer marketing in many ways works. Advertisers that ran an influencer campaign, right, for 2 or more weeks saw an average increase of about 15% in the brand mention. So if you and you hate to say it, buy people talking about you, it works. You actually get more conversations, you get more mentions, you get people out there at least creating awareness where they may otherwise completely ignore you and your efforts. All of that to say that the role of a chief marketing officer must evolve, right? And the impact with the right CMO becomes incredible when they put their best digital foot forward. So if you can't talk to a prospect, if you're not talking to a prospect, if you don't know who is the prospect for your products and services until they've done most of the research, where are they getting that research from? Who's influencing their thinking? Yeah, you better believe it's gonna come from digital. I don't know about you. I can't remember the last time I called a company and say, hey, have a sales rep come call me, or could you please send me some of your marketing material? But I download position papers like you in this session. I attend webinars. So how well does your company, how well does an organization put its best digital foot forward? And it's crazy to believe, still in 2017, a lot of websites are still static. A lot of websites might as well be the brochureware of the early 2000s. And people are shocked when I tell them this. Lifespan of a website is 18 to 36 months. That's it. The technology moves so fast that unless, and again, you'll see some of these things in a second, right? So that is, and it's not just your own website. That's your storefront. Where else do you have a presence for others to learn about you or learn about the impact you create? Which you got to tightly integrate sales, marketing, business development, right? And there's data points. People who do this well are not only able to grow their revenues, but also much more profitable revenues. Multi-channel presence with a very consistent experience. I want to be able to go into a location and see it, touch it, feel it. I want to be able to see a demo of it. I want to go to an independent site that's using it. I want to be able to buy it through an online experience. 6 different channels in their decision journey. And what's scary is 70% of them walk away with frustrated. Think about it, right? I can get to my bank on their website, but I can't get there with mobile. Or I get there with mobile, and it's goofy as all get out, and the menus aren't anywhere near the same, and I've got to figure out why. Why are you making me? If I come to you through 2 different channels, I walk into my bank, I've been banking the same place for a whole bunch of years, they still ask me for an ID. Right? So it just creates frustrations, right? So more and more companies are trying to create consistency across these multiple channels. Awareness and engagement systems, right? They got to be mobile optimized. They have to be customer centric. And if I can go into a big box retailer, a big box do-it-yourself retailer, right, and check out by myself, well, why can't I do that on your website? Why can't I do that with your mobile app? So that self-service, automated self-service functionality becomes important. Engage in impactful segmentation to really identify and characterize typical customers. So these are just some of the examples of the impact, and by the way, use journey mapping, right? You heard that one before, of what an incredible CMO can do for a brand, for a company, right? Just a reminder, questions, comments, ideally I don't want to talk at you for the hour. So if you have questions, if you want to jump in with anything you want me to clarify, I'm happy to just use the question section on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'm happy to stop and address those. So we talked a lot about marketing. As I said, sales. I can't think of a part of the organization that doesn't need to evolve, right? So again, I don't know about you, I use LinkedIn a lot, and for a long time we used I think it was user number like 3,000, and now they're on to several hundred million users, right? So early on, most of us used it from the desktop. Not only do I want to use it from the desktop, I want to use it on my smartphone, and with their purchase by Microsoft, I also want to integrate it into my Outlook, right? And it's just a very simple example of people want to access you, they want to access their community, their network, their information at the time of their choosing and on the device of their choice. Time of their choosing and device of their choice. Will you be there when they want to choose, when they want to evaluate you, your products, your services? And this applies, that's the crazy part. This applies as much to membership organizations, think of like an industry association, as it does academic forums, right? Think of schools. I had a fantastic visit with a head of alumni relations. And I said, tell me 2, 3 things you guys do really well. Well, we think we engage, we think we give you the warm and fuzzy, more so with the recent grads, not necessarily your class. My class graduated a few years ago, right? And I said, you keep sending me stale surveys, you have no idea how I feel about the school. I had a good experience while I was here. And by the way, there are people who want to get involved and they want to engage, but I don't know how to navigate your website. I don't know who to go to. And you don't have a way for me to update my information, right? LinkedIn does, you don't. So this is what I'm referring to. Of every job, every function in the organization has to evolve, has to really think about fewer. And in the book, I talk about the Jerry Maguire business model, right, from the movie. How do we work with fewer clients, but really create a deeper, more meaningful, more impactful relationship with those clients all across the organization? So I want to share with you a couple of case studies that I think will bring some of this to life. So I was blessed to meet a fantastic leader, a guy named Rod Moses, was the former head of global talent at Hilton. And oddly enough, he attended my kid's school. So we met through this group called Men's Fraternity, which is, for lack of a better word, a prayer group for the Whitfield dads. I know you're going to cringe, 6 a.m. On Friday mornings. But I get up at 5 and I go there and we fill the cup and you meet some great guys. Just over casual conversation. What do you do? I work for Hilton. I'm thinking local property. What do you do for Hilton? Well, I run talent. Again, I'm thinking, local, regional. And I said, well, local, regional? No, global. So I said, well, I appreciate it, but I don't really work with HR. What do you do? I write, I coach, I consult, but I don't really work with HR people. He said, well, I'm not really your traditional HR, and he, gave him, we met for lunch, came over to my home office, gave him a copy of Relationship Economics, and we just headed off because early on I saw that Rod thinks differently. And after reading Relationship Economics and we started talking, he said, I could use your help with that whole campus recruiting. And as I got to know them, and this isn't, none of this is confidential, private information, is pretty public, pretty available, right? So Hilton was basically getting out hustled to reach the next generation of their talent. And as you think about it, the millennials don't want to walk into a hotel property and see their parents, if not their grandparents, working there. So Hilton has got to do a better job of creating awareness, creating traction, engaging, influencing, hopefully hiring the next, every company does, right? The next generation of its talent. The problem is they were getting out hustled by these other brands and they just didn't have the pipeline. And as I got to know them, I saw them doing some really amazing things, but also some definitely areas that we could improve. So what we came to after several months of getting to know them and really understanding the program, I said, listen, to build a great relationship, it's really predicated by building a great conversation. So what if we build a community? What if we build a campus conversations community based on your focused schools? It can't be everywhere. There's about 15 U.S. universities that have a hospitality program. So let's focus on that. By the way, even if we don't hire them as employees, how fantastic if they become, fans of the Hilton brand. You remember, you're no longer controlling your own brand, right? So what if we also, got them to join Hilton Honors, right? And what if we, instead of all about us, in that conversation, we really understood what they were trying to do. So as you can see, bottom left corner of your screen, once they join the community, let's really think about what do they need their freshman year, right? They're trying to figure out where the dead people buildings are. So what if we created an externship where they had an opportunity to become acquainted with the Hilton property, right? Come and spend 1 week with us. And during the day you can work in kind of the back operations. At night, stay there as a guest, but really kind of come and get immersed into that, right? Sophomore year, now they're trying to learn how to interview. Now they're trying to learn how to actually get an internship. And why don't we do these career fairs where we really engage them in a conversation, and information sessions where we really explore where you going, what are you doing, what fields seem to intrigue you, and what if we build a co-op, and what if we build a 10-week internship program, which they have now, right, to really start giving you more of a taste. By the way, junior year, let's really help button them up. And what if we created a hospitality Olympics so they could come and learn not only about the different brands, but different functions in a brand, like food and beverage and operations and housekeeping, and right? And by the way, by senior year, what if we couldn't direct place them, what if we placed them in our management development program? And it was a 6-month program, and you really got immersed, and you really came in, and all of that to say, both on campus, but also in our properties, we want to come alongside that journey and really help them learn and grow. So not only are millennial or on-campus applications up, but now Hilton has much greater mind share with those professors and with those career, campus career centers and people that come and have a great experience. Again, this is a company that does a lot of things really well, right? As they come in and learn about the brand, and learn about the Hilton family, and literally learn about this incredible legacy of this company, they now become advocates, and they really start carrying the flag. It's a example of thinking differently and functioning very differently in just that campus recruiting, but also really setting the expectations, whether you go to a property or come to corporate, and really we segmented different audience members over time, and we branded this whole campus conversations brand because that's where great relationships come from. Similarly, KPMG's been a client for a number of years, and they've got this fantastic group called Anti-Bribery and Corruption, right? This is a really smart people, and of course they have their fact sheets and they have their marketing material and media and proposals and brochures, and we said, let's take a different approach, right? What if we likewise whiteboarded kind of what do you do today and how do you do it? And really started thinking about those different customers and who calls in, you know, an anti-bribery and corruption practice, right? Is it already hit the fan and you're trying to do damage control? Is it really you're trying to prevent that from happening? What happens in their minds when this triggers, right? And we found out that, you know, KPMG had particular strengths in, look at the three buckets on the left-hand side, right? Blue is prevent, green is detect, red is respond, right? So how do we prevent things from happening? How do we detect what is happening? And it's amazing, people that actually conduct fraud are very clever in setting up, you know, different vendors and paybacks and kickbacks and different currencies. And by the way, how do we respond to it, right? How do we make sure now we nip it in the bud, but prevent it, you know, from happening in the future? The other thing we figured out was a lot of these companies had very specific nuances. So what if we changed the conversation from here's our brochure and here's our proposal and here's all the pitch that we do, which I can't stand, by the way, and I'm convinced, unless you're a professional baseball player, don't pitch anybody because people don't like to be pitched at. They want to have a conversation. So what if we showed up with a canvas and we had a conversation about, look, here's your headquarters, here's potentially your global risk, and we overlaid, here's areas where we believe, right, training is needed. Not we can come and do it, training is needed. And what if it was a unique conversation for each of the different groups, from compliance to legal to audit to finance, right? And what if there was a library of these visual components, in essence, a common visual language to help get that client, get that prospective client on the same page? So this is how few people in ABC are really taking this, piloting it, taking these ideas to the market by creating very different conversations than you sit there, you be quiet, let me tell you how smart we are. Again, that's the push economy. What I'm showing you is really all about co-creation. The last example is the ThyssenKrupp elevator. Again, really smart group of people. This is a large manufacturer of elevators and escalators. I'm working with the Americas group that they had their typical, you know, kind of columns and pillars, right? And by the way, Germany is a German company, had its own way of strategically telling you what you need to do, how to do it. And you know, when you say visualization, you know, these guys had also brought in this goofy, you know, cartoonish stuff in the past with let's help you bridge the past from the present and the future. Right? It just, you know, this was great and it was clever, but it just really didn't go anywhere, right? So again, I'm about doing things differently. So we facilitated a conversation in their boardroom with a few really strategic thinkers, and really, you know, prioritized what if we went through an iterative process. And while I'm you know, kind of on my feet and we're talking, our creative director Lynn Wilson, who by the way did all the illustrations for the Co-Create book, starts to sketch out some ideas. And we come up with this core concept of what they're really after is a great, I would say, exceptional customer experience. So what if we took that idea of creating exceptional customer experience, and instead of pillars that don't really convey collaboration, we came up with rings. We came up with supporting rings that I'm not sure anybody's going to argue with. Quality solutions, great place to work, and an effective communication. But don't just give me motherhood and apple pie. What if we included credible either projects we're working on or aspirations we're after or other ways to really articulate, here's where we're going, here's what we're doing, here's why our work in this area matters. And now you've taken a 40-plus strategy presentation and you've created a single image that articulates, here's our path forward. Here's how we will work together. Here's, in essence, by the way, how we will co-create the future of your job, this function, this team, this geography, this organization. So now you start to, if you open every meeting, every call with this image, you start to get buy-in from your most valuable asset, which is not just your employees, but also your employees articulating something similar to your partners, to your customers. Now everybody gets on the same page. So what we found works really well is the due diligence process that leads to strategic conversations, that leads to concepts, that leads to a design, conceptual design, that then is launched. And there's a reason 90% of clients bring us back to really extend and expand that. And that's what we're calling strategy visualization. And you can learn more about this on the website. But I'm showing you examples of what we're out there talking to people about, what we're out there doing in terms of visually articulating where they are, where they're going. In the last few minutes, let me just recapitulate or capture kind of how to apply some of these ideas. So, most of us have seen complex concepts and then somebody really simplifies it with, then, okay, you go close the deal. Great. Now I see how that works. Or let's go back to our desk and get it all of us on the same page of why this will never work. So what I wanted to do with the book was hopefully make it practical and pragmatic. So end of each chapter references a tool. In the next week or two, you're going to be able to, and we have that as a bonus, download a workbook, a PDF workbook. I'm also going to print it and make it available with the book. But at the end of each chapter, there's some very specific set of tools and step-by-step process on how to apply the ideas I just talked about in that chapter. And whenever I use a case study or an example, I'm going to show you this in the cognitive computing session. I'll overlay it with the idea, with the visual, so you can actually figure out and see how it can be used. What I'm most proud of, as I mentioned, is I typically think much better on my feet. And what I drew up for a client, and you can see the 10 points in the bottom right corner, has actually become the co-create canvas. And it's fascinating to see what people are doing with this. Again, I'm also going to make this available as a PDF you can download on our website. So to wrap up, there's 4 operating principles you want to focus on. How do you build relationships as a tool for empowerment, not hierarchy? How do you measure and constantly look to ways to enhance the journey experience of your employees, your partners, your customers, your investors? How do you envision and really think about an evolution of your compelling value? And then how do you align? How do you really bridge silos inside and out? So I hope we can continue the conversation. Again, I can't encourage you enough. CoCreateBook.com. This is what it looks like. Not only all the webinars we kind of post, but there's details there about if you're in the Atlanta area, I'd love to have you join us for the book launch party on May 2nd. There's also a virtual component to that. And we're going to give a ton of the proceeds to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. It's an organization I'm passionate about. And more details on that will be available. We're finalizing a co-create video, very simple animation that you can download and use it to explain to others. Co-create, there's actually some pre-order bonuses I'll talk about in a second, and then links to different articles, videos, learning opportunities. So this is where I could use your help. If you've gotten value out of the session, not only I hope you'll come back, but we've partnered with some great folks, both on the single book purchase, but also the bulk side. As individuals, as a bonus, you'll get the Relationship Economics audiobook, 8 CDs as a downloadable MP3 files. There's the workbook. There's 20-plus tools we've created all about how to apply these ideas. And then I'm also creating a 30-minute video coaching session on how to get the most out of the canvas. And I looked at the rough cut of it the other day. It looks compelling. It's valuable. It's like me standing there one-on-one spending time with you on this. On the bulk purchase, it's a great idea if you want to get a group kind of working around an idea. There's all kinds of ways to customize it with book plates inside and wraps and that kind of stuff. Buy up to 100. We'll do a free customization. I'm happy to get an executive or team coaching call. I'm happy to do a webinar or presentation similar to this specifically for your organization. Somebody just engaged me to go in and do a keynote for their conference, and they're buying a bunch of books, always up to half-day workshops, as well as full-day workshops and an entire strategy visualization kind of rough concept for your organization. So that's the hashtag we've been using, and I want to leave you. I saw this and it absolutely resonated. The electric light did not come from the continuous improvement of candles. How often do we all see companies and teams do iteration really well? Here's a bigger candle. Here's a fatter candle. Here's a wider candle. Here's a candle coming out of a rock. That's fantastic. None of it is the light bulb and LED and flashlights and all the iterations that come from thinking and leading differently. So there's nothing wrong with iteration. The challenge becomes very few people really engage in innovation. Even fewer can really think about disruption. And that's what it's going to take. Innovation and disruption through a few strategic relationships. It's what's going to evolve you. It's what's going to evolve your team. It's what's going to evolve your organization. So that's all I have. Hope there's my contact information. If there's anything I can do to help, please reach out. I hope this has been useful to you. I hope you'll continue to join us for other session in this webinar series to get an early peek into some of the ideas I've been thinking about for 3-4 years. That's it for today. Thanks, everybody. Hope this was useful. I look forward to having you on the next one. Take care. All the best. Bye-bye.